And now we're welcoming to the stage Sandie Okoro. Sandie, if you want to make your way up. And while Sandie's arriving on the stage, she's General Counsel of HSBC Global Asset Management, and she's Deputy General Counsel of HSBC Retail Banking and Wealth Management. And before that, she was Global General Counsel at Barings. And I'm just going to say a couple of things because, you know, she's not... taking a spectacular selfie, fine, okay. She got the 2014 Chambers Europe Award for Excellence in the category for outstanding contribution to the legal profession, and she's the winner of the Law Society's Minority Lawyers Conference for encouraging minority lawyers. So we're going to talk about all of those things in a minute. I gave an example, or somebody else gave an example actually, of a young woman who came to be mentored 5 years ago, thinking she wanted to be a lawyer. She was mentored by Shami Chakrabarti, as it happened. She's not a lawyer, not because she couldn't have been, but because she decided that actually it wasn't that she wanted to be a lawyer, she just wanted to make a difference to the world. But, I mean, you are a lawyer. And how did that all begin for you? When did you know you wanted to be one? And did you have images already that made you think, well, yeah, I want to be like that?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. What an audience. Wow. Yes, I did. I saw a programme, for those of you that are old enough in the audience to remember Crown Court. I hear a few chuckles, so obviously some people do. I used to see that, and I used to see, they had lots of female characters who were barristers and who were judges, and I thought that's what I want to do. I want to be a judge, and I got that image from that. There were a few lawyers in the family, but actually a lot of them, my mother is from Trinidad, lived in Trinidad rather than in London, so I didn't necessarily have any role models that looked like me doing law that I could relate to. And just sort of associated with that, there's a story I'm going to tell you that's going to make you gasp a little bit, so prepare your very good gasps. I was at school, primary school. I was about sort of 7 or 8, and the teacher went around saying, you know, to everybody in the class, girls and boys, what do you want to do? And there were some really, really silly answers coming up, and I was a very proper 7-year-old, and felt I was very sorted. And, some of the boys were going, I want to be a footballer, and some of the girls were going, I want to be a princess. And I was thinking, you can't play football, and you're really not going to be a princess. And she came to me, and I thought, right, I've got I know what my answer is going to be. And she said, Sandie, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a judge, thinking that's a lot more sensible than anybody else has come out with. And do you know what she did? She turned around to me and she said, Sandie, I'm sorry, but little black girls from Balham don't become judges. Oh, wonderful gasp, thank you. Now, that was back in the 70s. I know I don't possibly look old enough for that to have happened, but it is true. And, she would have been sacked for that now. But the one thing that I really took from that is, well, what do you know? You are a teacher, you're not a judge. How do you know that doesn't happen? And I thought, well, if they don't, they really are, it's really going to happen to me now. I'm going to make it happen. That's not going to stop me. I've told this story to a few people before, and they often say, well, what would you go back and say to that teacher? I don't actually think she's alive anymore, but if she were alive, I'd probably say, you see this little black girl here? See what she's done now.
What was the support around you that made you not just die, shrink, and retire, but made you do what you just said you did, which is go, well, I'll show you, effectively? Was there other support mechanisms that helped you?
That's a great question, and I think there were several when I think about it. One was my mother. I find that often strong women have other strong women as either mothers or aunts or whatever, and I have some very, very strong women in my family. As I said, my mum comes from a Caribbean background, that's almost in the genetics. And she would never have let me sort of feel that I couldn't do something because of my gender or because of my race. She'd have said, ignore it, don't worry about it, don't be so silly. And she was a nurse. She had many challenges facing her because she came over here in the late 50s, but she never thought that was should be an issue for me. So my mother was very strong. She was a working mum, and I grew up in that environment. The other thing is, growing up in the 70s, there were many more strong female role models in the media than there are now. Now, whether you liked them or you didn't like them, there were lots of them in sort of professional life. So there was, Margaret Thatcher as a Prime Minister. There were many, many women. There was Shirley Williams. There was Barbara Castle. There was Angela Rippon reading the news. There were lots there. So I had, even though they didn't necessarily look like me, they were the same gender as I was. So actually I thought, well, I could do things. I felt the world had already changed. And when I look now, and I've got a daughter, I look now and I look out and I don't see so many of them. And I think, what has happened? How come we've become backwards? They're not as visible. So I had those two things.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you always think that progress is just going to go on an inevitable journey. I regularly remind people that there have been incredible women through history that have done extraordinary things, and sometimes great big clusters of them, and yet they've disappeared because progress slows down, goes backwards.
Yeah.
And
they were international too. There was Indira Gandhi, so many of
well,
them.
when I was a
everywhere
little
you
girl,
turned.
the two prime ministers that I remember, Indira Gandhi, Golda Meir, were the prime
exactly.
ministers. And I kind of assumed that's what women did. They were prime ministers. But later on, you suddenly discover that people say to you, well, no, there's no women theatre directors, which is one of my situations. And there were, and there had been, but they were unknown to history or not talked about. So, okay, so you had a mum to kind of say, come on, keep going, get on with it. And I mean, it's one thing to be a woman, it's another thing to be a black woman going in to become a judge. By the way, is that your ambition to become a judge?
Yes, I haven't let that go yet. And it's something that is open to me, not something I want to do right now. If my employees are listening to this, you're fine, I'm not going anywhere. But I still keep that open, it's something I want to do. But, you have to go on this legal path to get there. It's something I think I might like to do one day. I haven't given up on that ambition. No.
This is a really important thing as well, because most women are encouraged to be modest and not kind of go, I'm ambitious and I want the top job. Because, we're kind of made to feel that somehow that's not what nice girls do. Go out for the big slice of pie. But I don't know how we change the world to become an equal place, as Lauren says, to have half the sky, half the planet, unless people like you do what you've just done, which is, yes, I'm going to be a judge. Because if you put yourself forward, of course, you might not become a judge, so is that some big failure if you don't? But you've decided that you're going to have your ambition open. Is that unusual?
Well, I think women tend to feel they can't achieve these big picture things. I don't just want to become a judge. I want to become head of the Supreme Court, guys. It's not just being a judge. That's just
Let's just
and
understand.
So I say it. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, and it doesn't mean bad things are going to happen because I just said it. It means I can throw it out there. It may not happen. And one of the things I think that I say I do lots of mentoring, and I think mentoring is really important. And Madeleine and Albright once said there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. And I think that is really, really, really true. So the mentoring is really important. What I say to people when I mentor them is dream big, think big. That is free. Your ambition is free. You can dream as much as you want and dream big and have really big aspirations. And I've got loads of them that I won't share with you because it's way too embarrassing and I'll sound particularly stupid. But, I've got lots of things that I would want to do. And I put the big things there because, it's that old phrase, if you aim for the moon, you'll hit the stars. And I think part of the reason I'm here sitting now is I always dreamt big. I dreamt judge. And if I hadn't dreamt judge, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing, which is on the step there. And I often come across, the women I mentor who don't dream big enough. They don't set big enough goals for them, that somehow if they do that, they're going to jinx it, or somehow they're not good enough to dream big. So what I would say is set out a really big ambition and aim for that. And if you don't, you'll hit something equally as big and equally as interesting on the way. And don't be afraid to do it, because I think probably men do that. With probably a lot less ability. They just think, right, I'm going to go and do that and set off on the path. And I think we need to do that a little bit more.
Do you think that that voice, the voice that said, well, little black girls from Balham don't do that, or in my case, who do you think you are, is a phrase that I'm sure a lot of us have heard before. Does that voice still come back ever to haunt you? Or, are there moments when you have fear and doubt and insecurity? Because successful women can look like they're fully wrapped, they've done it. But, you're still on a journey. Do you still get insecure?
Well, yes, all the time. But I try and overcome that. It's not easy sitting up here talking to all of you in the audience. but you do it because, actually you start to get comfortable doing something like that. You realise people want to hear your story, so you do it. But that quote of the little black girls from Balham, I carried that with me, and I carry that with me a lot to show me that I can do it. So I took something positive from it, because you hear so much negativity that if you can somehow turn that round to make it positive, it really works. And someone was asking me, the other day, how do you cope, with certain discrimination that's out there, particularly, if it's gender, sexual orientation, race, whatever it is, disability. And I said, well, you make that person's problem, not your problem, because the world is going forward and they're going to get left behind in it. So you just carry on with your journey forward and let them bear that particular issue, because I think you tend to take it on yourself like it's now your problem. And it's well known that you can't be discriminated against unless you let someone discriminate against you, because if you feel that, then you take a step back that you shouldn't really take. You don't do something you really should do. But if you say, that's your problem, you have that issue, that's your problem, I don't have that issue, I totally believe in myself and I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm going to find someone who doesn't think like you or work for a company that doesn't think like that.
So you've got to find other avenues somehow.
Yeah, it's not the only avenue, and sometimes when that happens you tend to think it is.
And one of the things that you've been overt about, right, is right, I am a woman and I'm going to stand up for women. I'm a black woman, I'm going to stand up for racial equality. Now, some people avoid doing that because, in a sense, they don't want to have the burden of representation. But clearly you thought you would.
Well, look at me. How can I not do that? When there are very few women who do what I do. There are very few women in the city, very few women in senior positions in the law. And virtually, I don't think there are any black women who are as senior as I am in the law in the city. So if I wasn't going to stand up here and talk about that and help other people achieve the same thing, I think I would have failed. You don't set out to be a role model or anything like that. You become that because that's what other people see in you. And if someone says to me, can I just talk to you about how you overcame this or how you dealt with this, I feel it's my responsibility to do that, because I didn't get here on my own. I had other role models. I've had mentors. I've got a very great mentor at the moment who's a male mentor. And I've had, family support. I've had so many things, and I'm a single mother. I've got 2 children. My daughter's autistic. You can pile it on and you can pile it on, and I've probably got it somewhere, and just sharing that really makes a difference, because I recently had my photograph taken for something, and they had to put a line below that to describe it. And it was about this time last year, and I just joined HSBC, and I was in between jobs. And I said, okay, describe me as a black single mother from South London who likes watching Jeremy Kyle. Because that was true at the time. But there is this unconscious bias and stereotype about what that means, and I wanted people to realise I'm that person too. That is one of the descriptors about me. You could have all kind of descriptions you want, like I said, and being a single mum and juggling things, it's not, I only look at my diary. I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. People keep asking what you're doing at the weekend. I don't know. I haven't opened the page yet because I haven't had time. So I think it's really important to share that, because my experience is the same experience for all of you out there. And the only difference that I can say for all of you, if you've got ambitions, is to just keep going. That's the only secret. There was no other secret. I just kept going. I've fallen over many times. I've got back up, and I've carried on. And I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I don't have a silver spoon right now. And there are lots and lots of challenges in my life. But the keeping going is the bit. I just wake up every day and I go, right, brush your teeth, get out the house one step at a time.
I think Lauren said the same thing. Don't wait till you're perfect. Don't wait till situations are perfect. There will never come about that time. Just get going one step at a time. But one thing I do think really helps when this getting going is sharing and support structures and admitting actually that we need each other. And we had a wonderful session yesterday with the Schools Day. We had here the first female Muslim woman professional boxer. She's 23. Oh, wow. And, it's something to take on all of those models all in one go, a bit like, you just said. And And I mean, her dad really supports her brother really supports her mum really supports her. But what she's immediately then done is set up all of these boxing classes for other young Muslim girls. And it's been amazing for them. That's the show that's on tonight, by the way, in the Purcell Room. And I think that's the generosity that I see in this room and you're talking about, which is I've done it, or I'm on my way, and I'm going to immediately turn around and hold my hands out on both sides and say, let's all do this together. Who taught you that? Was that just, where did you see that in other people?
I think maybe it's because I didn't see it. I think in some ways, other than those role models I've mentioned, I saw lots of women who didn't let the ladders down for other women or didn't help them along and try to, and this is probably more of a generational thing, make it seem like there's some mystique about how they got there, instead of saying, actually, this is what I've learned. Doesn't necessarily mean it will work for you, but this is my story, this is my journey. You can get something out of that. And just one of the things that I've done very recently at work, so I've recruited this new team, is I've realised that there were so many things I felt I needed while I was going up the career ladder and when things were difficult for me, was, flexible working, and it just wasn't there. So I have created this structure in the team where every single person in my team, male and female, has to work 2 days a week, 2 days a week at home and 3 days in the office. I've imposed flexible working on everyone. Oh, that's popular. And productivity is up. I've got a really happy team. They desk share. Teamwork is really good. Anyone who thinks flexible working is not the way to go really probably is in a different century, literally. I appreciate some jobs you can't do. Like I couldn't do this from home. Well, I could do it by video conference, I guess. But there's some things you can't do from home, but there are lots of things you can. And people work much better if you give them that flexibility. And I decided right from the beginning, brand new team, so there weren't any issues about anything, is everybody had to do it. And the one thing, when I was interviewing people, I said right up at the front, this is how you're going to have to work. And the men were just as keen on it as the women. And so I don't think it's a gender flexible, it's a people issue. It's an employee issue. And they were saying, great, I can pick my kids up from school, I can do this, I can do that. They suddenly saw that they could manage their time in a different way. And as I said, I think I've now actually got one of the best teams of in-house lawyers around. They are so dedicated, they are so responsive, and it's just amazing because I've given them something, treated them like adults, and they give much more back.
I wanted to ask you about this issue of changing a structure, lock, stock and barrel, because it seems to me that when women do achieve a position of real influence and real power, then they have got the opportunity to go, right, we're going to turn the paradigm this way, we're going to turn something around. Now, I remember about year 2 of WOW, we had Kieran Bedi here. Kieran Bedi, she was the first person in India in charge of the army and in charge of the police. And then she went on to run most of the major prisons.
Oh, wow.
And she introduced praying in the prisons. And she introduced all kinds of different sorts of mindfulness, actually. And violence dropped hugely. But that ability to go, we're going to do a completely different thing now. More women, maybe, should find the courage to do that when they have got some power. But do you think that because so many women are under inspection once they're in top jobs, it's very difficult, isn't it, for them to be not only in the top job, but also then to say, and we're going to do it completely differently?
Yeah, I think there is, you're putting yourself out there if you do something like that, because if it fails, it doesn't just fail because it was a bad idea, it fails because you're a woman and you're a black woman and it was a bad idea. So things are looked at in a different context. But I think sometimes you have to have that moral courage, because change in every society, in every country, and in every walk of life have come from people who've had the courage to do something different and to see things differently. I don't put myself in that bracket whatsoever, but I do take comfort from people who've done that before, who've done much bigger things and just say we're all going to do flexible working. That's nothing compared to some of the things people have decided. We're not going to sit on the back of the bus anymore, and we're going to walk across the bridge in Selma, Alabama, and we're going to change segregation in the South. That's a big thing. But you take comfort from the fact people have made these big changes because they just said we're going to do it. And I think the rule book needs to be ripped up a little bit. And there's a lot of obviously academic text out there about how you manage teams, leadership, etc. But often that comes from what's gone on in the past and looking at what's gone on in the past. And what's gone on in the past has been a very male-dominated leadership. So what would it look like in the future if women were doing it? Well, I think that would be one thing that we'd have been doing for ages, is flexible working. Things would be very different. So I think it's not always easy, and sometimes you don't have the mandate to do it. But I would say often don't ask for the permission, do it. And don't be fear is often what stops us doing things. We're only born with two fears: fear of falling and loud noises. Everything else we learn. So you have to kind of let that go a little bit and just sort of do it. And if you do it, I think, for the right reasons, and the reason I did it was I wanted that when I was going through, so why shouldn't I give that to everybody else and see if that works? And so I think if it comes from the heart and the right reasons, it's really unlikely to fail, actually.
Okay, well, we've had an amazing conversation here, because it's very inspiring to see somebody who's been so generous, so committed, and has such ambition.
It's been a pleasure.
How can we make sure that you do become the Supreme Justice? Well,
follow me on Twitter and go, next head is Supreme Court. It's
a kind of serious question.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I get a lot of energy from being in a room like this, feeling that I can do it, because just the fact I'm sitting here even talking about it almost makes it real. And looking at you all, I think, I now need to go and do it, because you're going to think I'm a real fraud if I don't. So, no, it's out there. I've got lots of other ambitions as well. But, these things, if you put it out there and, you actually have a well of support for it, it does happen. So when you see it in the newspaper, send me a line and go, well done, Sandie.
Thank you, Sandie Okoro.
Thank you.